Hello and welcome to BikeWale, and today we'll tell you what the new Harley Davidson X440 is like to ride. We rode the motorcycle yesterday for a couple of hours at Hero's R&D Center in Jaipur. We rode it on the performance track, we rode it at its handling track, and we came away pretty impressed. Why? Well, that's exactly what we're going to explain to you in the course of this video. But first, let's just do a little recap on what the motorcycle's all about. Now, we've already done a detailed video on the motorcycle. We just did it a couple of days back. You can check that out if you want greater detail on the versions and the prices and the features that it comes with. But just to get started, this is Hero and Harley's first product, a collaboration that they got into not just for distribution but to develop new motorcycles, entry-level motorcycles, mainly for Harley. And there will be Hero motorcycles based on the same engine and platform, which will come in March of next year. Now, for Harley, this is an entry-level motorcycle, but it will not be sold in the US or UK markets, at least for now. The concentration is for India completely, and it is a ground-up new motorcycle. So you've got a brand new engine, you've got a brand new chassis, and the idea is that, of course, that they will take on the Royal Enfield 350 with this, the Classic and the Meteor, and it allows people to get into the Harley brand at a much earlier age or younger age and at a much lower price point. Now let's begin with the engine, because that's really the big story here. It is a brand new engine from the ground up, a 440cc single cylinder engine. It's air cooled and it's got oil cooling to keep the efficiency up. Now this is a long stroke engine, something that we've already seen in this class with the Classic 350. A long stroke engine essentially helps with good low and mid-range torque, which is something that Harleys have been known for, and clearly they wanted to bring that into the lower segment or the entry-level price point for Harley customers as well. There is a lot of work Hero and Harley engineers say they have done in improving the exhaust note, so that they say that one must be able to hear the Harley before they can see it, and so it's loud, it's got a brawny note to it, and they've worked hard to achieve that. Now this engine, in terms of power and torque, it is significantly better in terms of output figures compared to the Classic 350, and this is coupled to or mated to a 6-speed gearbox instead of a 5-speed that we've seen in this class, especially with the Classic. Now this 6-speed gearbox allows for added flexibility, so they have used an overdrive as the 6th, so when you're cruising it'll help you give you better fuel efficiency, and it'll keep the vibes low. So in terms of powertrain, a good job done in terms of specs, and we'll tell you how that feels in a few moments from now. Now moving to the chassis, again it is completely new, and I'm honestly not a fan of the way this trellis frame looks, because otherwise it's a good looking frame, but you can see that there is a bar that runs across the engine. It has clearly been put there to add some more stiffness to the frame, but unfortunately it looks like an afterthought instead of something that would be integrated in the design. We've seen other trellis frames in various motorcycles and they don't look as disjointed as it does on this. But again, Hero and Harley engineers say function over form, and that has worked. Again, we'll tell you that how that has worked when we get to the right part. But it is a brand new frame, and suspension wise, it's a mixed bag between using modern tech and some old school philosophy. So you've got upside down forks up front. They're not adjustable in any way, but they're KYB 43mm forks, and they are well damped. At the back you've got regular coil springs, twin coil springs, and you've got gas charge dampers, and adjustability here is just for preload. So good move in terms of having new tech at the front, but again it's old school stuff at the back. The travel, which is going to be important in this, is you've got 130mm on both ends, and that should help with the ride quality, which is something that we couldn't experience on the track. We didn't take it out on the road, so that is something we'll get to maybe when we ride the motorcycle again. Now in terms of brakes and wheels and tires, 18-inch front, 17-inch at the back, a decent combo to give you a good stance as well as give you that stability. And it runs brand new MRF tires, which remind you of the Phantom, the Pirellis, which came on the Interceptor initially in terms of tread pattern. but they're 18 front and 17 at the back. Brakes, single disc up front, single disc at the back, a bigger 320 disc at the front, 240 disc at the back, a dual channel ABS. So good spec overall. And now let's tell you how all this comes together when you start riding the motorcycle. Now, when we heard the price of the X440, we thought that is probably its biggest talking point, because at 2.29 for what the motorcycle offers, it was fantastic value. I mean, it still is. Now, when you start riding, some things become immediately clear. The engine is refined and smooth at idle. The clutch is light. The throttle response is alert. It's not jerky at all. So you can just get off the line quite smoothly. And the gear shifts also are light. They're precise. So it makes for a very easy and involving riding experience right from the get-go. We first took the motorcycle on the performance track, and we went absolutely hell for leather. We saw, with my weight, we saw about 135 kilometer per hour as the top speed. That, of course, is you got to dial in some speedo error in there. But it is a motorcycle that is, given a long stroke layout. We weren't really expecting a lot at the top end, but I think 130 kilometer per hour top speed is pretty good. And but the real good bit about this motorcycle is that with the 6-speed gearbox, you can sit at 100 kilometers per hour at just between 4 and 4,500 RPM. So it's a very relaxed ride at that speed, and you can, vibrations, there are barely any, be it on the handlebar or the foot pegs or the seat. So it's quite a comfortable experience, and you can spend time and do long cruises on this. Clearly, it is designed for that, and it does that job well. It's only when you get past 4,500 RPM that you can start feeling the lack of refinement seeping in. You can start feeling the vibes coming in. Again, they're not a lot, but even after 2 hours of riding, and we were gunning it most of the time, I wasn't left with buzzing hands. So, but you couldn't feel the vibrations. And ideally, I would have liked that these vibrations maybe started at 5,000 RPM, so it would give you a little more leeway when you're cruising. Instead of just being stuck at 100, maybe you can go up to 110, 120 and come back. So it would give you that sort of flexibility along with the refinement and smoothness. So that would have been great, but even now, it's not bad at all. Now, even when you're sitting at 100 kilometers per hour and you're doing 4,500 RPM, there's still quite a bit of purchase available in performance from the engine. It revs up to 7,000 RPM, and even at 4.5, you can just open the throttle and it picks up and gets to 7,000 without a problem. Now, again, I'm coming back to this fact that it's a long stroke engine, and you don't expect it to rev as freely, as happily as this one does. So that, again, was quite nice to see, quite nice to feel. And overall, on the performance track, it felt stable, it felt nice. The 6-speed gearbox, the way the shifts were, we were, you could just get into some hooligan activity. You could just go for it, accelerate through the gears. Felt good, good to ride. And then we moved to the handling track, and the motorcycle shined even more. Now, this is a heavy motorcycle. It weighs 190 kgs. It has a longer wheelbase than anything in its class. So you don't expect this motorcycle to change directions quickly. You don't expect this motorcycle to feel tight and small, especially when you're going around a tight, twisty track. But this one felt amazing. I mean, it felt like a much lighter, much smaller motorcycle, and Hero's test track for the handling circuit is quite tight. And it was changing directions without a problem. It felt stable. The tip-in is sharp. It holds its line beautifully when it's there. The amount of feel and grip that you have from the tires and from the chassis just builds that confidence that you can ride harder and harder. And when you do, sure enough, you start scraping the foot pegs. Now, this probably is one of the Harleys that has good cornering clearance, but even then, probably with the chassis and what this motorcycle can do, I think it wasn't enough. Maybe slightly rear set foot pegs, maybe slightly higher, would have given us a little more cornering clearance, and it would have felt better, because you don't want to keep scraping your pegs, because eventually it's going to pivot around the peg and get the wheels off the ground. So it's not something you want to get into. But we were scraping the pegs all the time, and again, because of the long wheelbase, we didn't feel like it would go from under us. So the feel from the tires, chassis, everything. So it was a very fun motorcycle to ride. And again, that torque from the engine, it allows you to choose between two gears without really ruining the line or acceleration out of college. You want to choose third, you can do it in third with slightly higher revs. You can choose fourth with low revs. But again, it's not like it bogs down. It's just this lovely spread of torque which allows you to just get on and get out of corners. So very enjoyable, very involving motorcycle, and not something that we were expecting given the specs and the weight of the motorcycle. So if you like riding, if you want to take it long distance, if you want to take it up the twisties, it works on both ends. Now the brakes, they have good bite, they have good progression, but the lever travel we thought was a bit too much, and we were catching our finger when we were applying it, aggressively, and that's something maybe Hero and Harley would want to change. Though they say that customers in this class expect slightly lazy braking because they're not very aggressive with the brakes, but it's not really a deal breaker in any case. So overall, a lovely motorcycle to ride, and be it in terms of engine, be it in terms of chassis, be it in terms of suspension, wheels, tires, brakes. So job well done. So should you consider buying the X440? We think you should definitely have it on your consideration list, because in terms of value, it is right up there in its class. A starting price of 2.29 is great, and you get essentially the same motorcycle that we spoke about. You get spoke wheels, and these are not of the tubeless kind. So yes, even though you have tubeless tires, you'll have to run it with tube. But that's really the only downside to buying the entry-level motorcycle. If you buy the next one, which is for 2.49, I think that's a great balance, unless you really want the connectivity features. Connectivity features work well on cars, but this is probably the first time we're seeing such a detailed thing apart from the Extreme 160R on a motorcycle. And unless we use it, we don't know whether it's going to be helpful. But for now, I think the mid-level makes a lot of sense. You get tubeless tires, and you can run them without tubes, of course, because you've got alloy wheels. And everything that we spoke about rings true for this mid variant. Now this is a motorcycle that has road presence. It looks better when you see it in the flesh than it does in videos or pictures. It has a Harley logo, which should really work for people who are buying a motorcycle for also show-off purposes, not just for riding, because it's a brand that everybody understands and knows and appreciates and wants. So that should work. So clearly, value-wise, there is no doubt for 2.49 lakhs ex-showroom or 2.29 lakhs ex-showroom, depending on what variant you want, you are going to get a lot of bike for that money. Then, of course, you get to the riding part, and the engine, the chassis, the suspension, all of that comes together to give you a motorcycle which is fun to ride, which is a happy motorcycle. So it doesn't matter what badge it carries. If you like riding, then this checks most of the boxes. It will work on a commute. Now, again, like we said, we haven't ridden it on the road, so we are not really sure about the ride quality. But given the suspension travel and the damping and the spring rates that we experienced on the track, it is not a stiff motorcycle. It should not be an uncomfortable motorcycle. So commute wise, or even if you want to use it for your weekend getaways, ride wise, it's great. So no two ways about that. Now, if we were to say reasons why you shouldn't buy it, I think there are two mainly. Now, this is a Harley Davidson. It is for 2.49 lakhs if you choose the mid variant, but the quality levels for this money are lacking. So overall, it's not like the motorcycle is poorly built overall, but when you look at, when you pick and prod and you look closely, you will find that the shut lines are not nice. Somewhere the plastics are too cheap. The finish at places is just not as premium as the price commands. So this is something that one must be aware of, that even though you're buying relatively expensive motorcycles, you're not, so that's something you need to be aware of, that even though you're buying an expensive or relatively expensive motorcycle, you're not getting the same levels of fit and finish. The other bit is the engine refinement, especially above 4,500 RPM. Now, when you're commuting or cruising, it's not really a bother. But I would have liked to see refinement levels throughout to be the same levels as they are up to 4000 RPM. There is no reason that Hero and Harley could not have done that. We've seen that with other OEMs. And it would just give the rider that sort of additional confidence to push the motorcycle harder, to enjoy it a little more. So these are really only two drawbacks that we could take away from our first ride experience of the motorcycle. We will have a more detailed review when we ride it, maybe in 3-4 weeks time out on the road. And maybe our opinions will change, maybe they'll stay the same. So do come back for that. Thank you for watching, but don't just leave, because we will have a detailed review of the X440's main competitor, the new Triumph Speed 400, coming soon on the channel. So do subscribe so you can catch that review when it comes.